Hi, this is Buzz, your global therapist, with your story today. Hey, look, I want to tell you a story about a girl by the name of Rebecca. Now, obviously, that's not her real name, but to protect her anonymity. I first met her when she was about 14 to 15 years old. Her mom and dad brought her in for therapy. Rebecca had problems with drugs, and like so many of these kids, they start off, mostly smoking marijuana. They didn't, she was not doing any heavy drugs at the time. But, over the years, the drugs were off and on. She had periods of time where she wasn't doing them. Obviously, the mom and dad, this is their only child. So they were very involved and these were the kind of parents that were involved in their kids' lives. So you kind of felt for the family because this is not usually the kind of cases I see where drug addiction is there. Which let you know that even in the best of families, even with the best of parents, sometimes things can go awfully wrong when people have a problem with addiction because this is deep seated. It has nothing to do with the parents in most cases or the environment. Sometimes some kids they just get affected by these kinds of things. What happens to their brain when their brain gets on these substances? It's to them it feels like a marriage made in heaven. But in reality, they're kind of beginning to slip toward that other direction, going toward hell. Well, eventually, as she got older, when she became about 18 and 19, she started to dabble with heroin. And where I lived was not real far from about an hour from the streets of Philadelphia, where a lot of these drugs were found. You could buy them there. In fact, one of the worst places in Philadelphia at the time was a place called the Badlands. And I mean, the Badlands are this kind of place that you didn't want to go and walk through during the day, let alone taking a pensive walk at night there. It was just flat out dangerous. And more than that was the neighborhood was predominantly a poor black, ghetto type of environment. So go figure that a white girl would show up there in her car looking for cheap heroin. But that's kind of where she was getting it. And the way I saw her was I would see her a couple months a year, and then she'd be gone. And it kind of made you grieve a little bit because you knew what she was doing. When she wasn't with me, and her parents were putting up a lot of money because the insurance company would only pay so many visits, and they wanted her in here every week to see me, almost every week. And and to describe what she looked like, she's a slightly overweight girl, not big, but she's overweight. But when she entered a room, she had this like aura. I don't know how to describe it. It was like her aura captivated the room. And if you want to know, I think everybody's got an aura. And if you want to feel what your aura is like, is have somebody walk towards you and get closer and closer. So all of a sudden, you feel like they're in your space. Well, clearly they've entered your aura, you know. But then there's these people that aura extends way beyond everybody else's aura, and she was one of them. She was one of those kind of people that entered a room, and you could feel her presence. And I think that that's what made this case all the more sad, is because her smile, her radiance, her ability to just smart, just laugh at stuff. We used to laugh in my office at so many things that it was hard to believe that she was going to leave my office at some point, sometime, and she was going to go back to the Badlands, back to the heroin, and do it over again. And so it was relapse, recovery, relapse, recovery. It was one of those things. And from the beginning, I told her to go to Narcotics Anonymous, which she did go, but she was one of those I would call back rowers there. She never really got involved, never necessarily got a sponsor. And the fact of the matter was, in the NA and AA type programs, she was young. She was only a teenager. So she didn't fit in with a lot of the other people that were there because they were much older and had a lot more experience at drug addiction. So she didn't feel like she could connect with them. And she never really gave anybody enough chance there to try to connect with her. And so her connection was with her parents and with their therapist, me. And, or so I thought, you know. But no matter how much you cared about her, no matter how much your connection was, the pull of the heroin was stronger. Well, one night she decided, when she relapsed, she went down to the Badlands in Philadelphia, much like she always did. Now, to give you an idea of distance, it's almost an hour away. So she drove quite a ways to get these drugs. Could she get the drugs locally? Yeah, but she could buy it cheaper there. She had connections there. I don't know. But she took the drive. And on the way home, she decided that she didn't want to wait till she got home because she was kind of strung out. So she decided to pull over and inject herself with heroin so that she would be okay for the ride. But you know, heroin's unpredictable. It's unpredictable about what it might do to you as far as the level of pleasure you're getting. I mean, you got to realize you're buying something from the street, so you have no idea, you know, how strong it is, the dosage, all that. All that's, you know, it's not a pharmacy. There's no pharmacist counting it. There's no FDA approving it. I mean, this is stuff you're buying off the street. Anything can happen. Well, this particular night, something happened. And she was almost home, and she was on the long highway home. It was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. And she passed out. She passed out. And the car went off the road and went into a little ravine. And the road that she was on was very dark. And when she went in the ravine, she was unconscious. She was not from the accident. She was unconscious from the drugs. But she was also in trouble. The drug had really hit her quite hard. And the thing about drugs, and I just explained this very quickly, you have what they call the therapeutic dose of a drug, and then you have what they call the lethal dose of a drug. And the more tolerance you build up, the more this therapeutic dose gets to the lethal dose. And the reason some people think, oh, when people die from drugs, it must be that they were depressed and they were trying to kill themselves. No, they were just trying to get high. But the tolerance level they got started growing and growing. And this was her problem. She'd been doing this for a while. And I mean, she was dying. She's sitting by the side of the road. She's dying. And the road was kind of, you couldn't see where she was from the road. Well, it so happens that there was this one guy that was, I mean, every city's got him, I guess, some homeless guy who was walking along the road at about 1:30 in the morning. And he notices on the side, you know, he looks down, he sees her car down there in the ravine, and he decides to go and investigate. And then when he goes there, he sees her in the car, and he realizes that, you know, she's in trouble. He was able to feel her pulse and see that she was breathing. She was barely breathing, and that she did have a pulse. So he goes up on the road and he flags down a car, and they call 911, and they brought her to the hospital. And if he hadn't come along, she'd have been dead. So you kind of wonder, don't you? Was this really a person? Or was this some kind of angel? Like, who stopped by to see her? I mean, it just was a bizarre story when you think about it. But this bum, you know, you want to call him that, this bum, this homeless guy, he wasn't a drunk. He was just homeless. Literally saved her life. He never stayed around. We never found out what his name was. He was just some guy walking at night who flagged the police, came down, and police, and the person that really got credit for the thing was the guy driving the car, but not the guy who was walking by. The guy driving the car would have never seen her, just like every other car that was on the road. They didn't realize that she had driven off the ravine and down a hill because it was not visible from the highway. They took her to the hospital, and I mean, it was life-saving efforts in the ER. I mean, she died several times, and they brought her back to life several times. But they realized that she had done significant damage to her heart. And in order for her to continue to pump blood through her body, they had to install a pacemaker. Pacemakers are really common for people who get very old. It's not unusual to see somebody on the pacemaker. For For somebody that's 21, very unusual. Very unusual. So, I mean, I got a phone call from her parents about this, because, and you have to understand, one of the hardest cases you want to deal with is when you have young people like this, is because we're not allowed to tell the parents anything about what the kid's doing or thinking. And you were, yet at the same time, the parents used to come to me for couples counseling on how to deal with an adolescent with a drug problem. So I was always like right on the edge and treading the line on what I say and don't say. But I always knew where she was at, because the parents would call me, because she would come into my office all, ha ha, happy, her parents would say she's having some episodes with drugs. So I was glad to have that communication with her parents. Of course, this particular night, the parents were woken up by the police. They were up all night, and when I went to my office, there was a message from me already from her parents. And I kind of figured, oh, she must be doing drugs again, because that's what she did. But her mom got on, and she was just, I can't describe what a mother's sadness is. Just sobbing on the phone about her daughter. Because on this time it wasn't just her getting high. This time, there was going to be some lasting effects here. I mean, her 21-year-old daughter was on a pacemaker to stay alive, to continue her heartbeat. And I remember her coming into my office when she got out of the hospital. She couldn't go to a rehab because the insurance won't pay for it, because they only pay so much. I mean, people think, oh, I got insurance. Yeah, as long as they're willing to pay for it. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to retire at age 62. I got frustrated dealing with insurance companies who refuse to pay. Keep in mind, insurance companies don't make money by paying claims. They make money by denying them. Why do you think that guy out in New York City was shooting that executive from the insurance company? Hey, I'm sure he didn't do it for some simple reason. Obviously, he's a bright guy. Somebody in his family probably got denied. I'm sure it'll come out. And so her parents brought her to me because they knew we were familiar with each other. And I remember her coming to the office, and at this time, she had this kind of weird smile on her face, like she always does, but but there was a sort of like a resignation kind of feeling that was in the room. I could feel the resignation. And I asked her, I said, Rebecca, I said, are you ready now? Are you really ready? And she said, yeah, I'm done. I'm done. All right, okay. And we began having real therapy. But it took years of fighting this battle before she was going to get real help. She started going to NA meetings every day, because I told her, I said, if you're going to work with me, you got to be at NA meetings every day. I said, you got to get involved. Don't sit in the back row. You get as close to the front as you can, in these meetings. And I said, you participate. If they're asking if anybody has anything to say, or anybody wants to talk about your feelings, you talk about your feelings. I said, you do everything possible to make that program become a part of you. Get a sponsor. She didn't really do that, but I said, find a sponsor. And the hard part about it was, I explained to her about sponsorship, that sponsorship isn't about getting somebody who's the same age as you, because more than likely there probably wasn't a lot of people in there that were her age. I said, but it's not the question of age, it's a question of common feelings and kind of common struggles that bring you together, not age. It's not a pal that you hang around with. These are people that if you need to talk to somebody at 12 o'clock at night, you're not going to be able to call old Buzz, the therapist, because he's asleep. I don't give people my home phone number. But that's when a sponsor comes in handy, because they can talk to their sponsor and at least maybe get through those hours where they're teetering on whether they use or not. That point of when you get, that relapse becomes a reality. So she did. And after a while, we discontinued our sessions because her parents were paying cash, And I'm back in those days, to give you an idea, I mean, right now, if somebody meets me here online, I'm charging $35. But when they were coming to me as a professional back in those days, it was $85. And it's more than that today. I mean, it's probably $100 to see a really good therapist. So when I charge people $35, you have to realize, technically, I'm giving away my service. But I'm an old man. I'll do it. I'll do it because I want to help. Anyway, I saw her about 3 years, 4 years went by, and I hadn't seen her, hadn't heard from her. And I don't chase people down. You know, it's that, as a therapist, that's not our job. Our job's not to call her and say, hey, you still out there? How you feeling? No, it's their recovery. It requires them to do the work, not me. My job as a therapist is to help them get in recovery and help them with their healing. My job's, we're not healers. We don't go out there and chase them down in the street. So I hadn't seen her in 3 or 4 years, I think it's probably been, and we passed each other in a Walmart parking lot. And when I looked at her, I could tell right away that the demons no longer had a hold on this woman's soul, you know. And I asked how she was doing. I said, hey, how are you doing? How are you doing, Rebecca? And she looked me right in the eye, you know. It's all those things. But, you know, when you have that, you know when they're lying to you, you know, but they'll look in the eye and not look in the eye, look in the eye, not look in the eye, and you just know something's wrong. Now, she looked me directly in the eye and she said, I'm doing great. And then she proceeded to tell me for a few minutes that she'd been in the program now for over 4 years. In fact, she even was sponsoring somebody. And that was a good day. I can't tell you, you know, look, the one thing I learned being in corporate life before I was a therapist, and I always pass this on to people in business, I always say, always remember, people work for more than just money. Because I lost a lot of money. I was a corporate vice president. When I became a therapist, I dropped down in income quite a bit. Even my father's chagrin, he said, I don't get why you're doing this. But my father never understood that what was in it for me was the opportunity to help people. Because, I mean, what are we doing on this earth? What's our purpose? I felt like my purpose was to help people. I've even tried being involved in ministry before that. I thought that was my go-to thing. But I found my niche, and I could tell you that day, it was a summer day too, and it felt like that particular day that the sun just shined a little bit better. You know what I mean? And I walked away, got in my car, and I just couldn't stop smiling the rest of the day. That's what it's like. I know that sometimes people live vicariously through their kids. I guess in some level we live vicariously through our clients. And that's a very dangerous game, by the way, because most of your clients, most of them don't, you know, they don't improve. Let's be honest. There's only a certain percentage that get to the place that this girl was at. But I enjoyed that one. And I want you to know that, you know, no matter how bad you think you might have it, some of you are maybe struggling right now that are listening, watching this. I want you to know that there's hope for you, no matter how far you've gone. I mean, you probably would say to yourself, Buzz, if you'd come to me a year ago, 2 years ago, yeah, maybe you could help. But man, my problem has gotten so big with drugs. There's no saving somebody like me. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your breath. Well, when people say that, I always try to remember Rebecca. That, you know, she proved to me, and maybe she can prove to you that that's not true. So, look, if you know somebody, maybe you're a mom or dad out there who's got a child that's got these kind of problems. The child could be 25. I'm not talking about an 8-year-old child. I'm talking about somebody 25. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old they are, does it? It's still your child that's suffering. And you want your child to get help. Or maybe you want help to deal with what's going on with your child. You've got somebody to call that I'm going to be able to understand. Sure, I had a national addiction license. I had an addiction license locally in the state I was in. I've written materials back in the day. One particular treatise I wrote was called Don't Help. Because it seems the more you try to help, the worse it gets. Sometimes you got to wait. So Rebecca was when she walked in my office when I simply said, Rebecca, are you ready now? Are you ready now? Because when your kid is ready, there's a lot you can do. But up until that, it's a battle. So it's like they're not listening to you at all. The drug, the addiction, the obsession is taking them over, and they're not hearing a word you're saying. It's a tough world out there. Let me know if I can help. Look, I'm just getting started online here. You could probably tell I haven't had a lot of views because, I mean, the YouTube algorithm doesn't know me. They don't know about my long experience with addiction, with depression, all the things I've treated over the years. And I treat just about every human problem. I really have. That's why I have confidence. I know I can help you because there's not too much I haven't seen or heard. Haven't heard everything. There's always somebody come along with a new story or a new problem. But for the most part, I have pretty broad experience. And it's up to you. I mean, I could get on here and continue to do videos and 10 or 20 people could watch me, but that's not very helpful. I want to get out there. I want to help more people, but I'm going to need your help. You subscribing is great. That means I added another person to the fold, but that's not going to get it done. The best thing you can possibly do is share this video with people. Just put it on your friends. If you have a Facebook, put it on your friends list. It's the easiest thing you can do is just put me up on the friends list, and all your friends will get to hear what I have to offer, because you don't know that somebody down the road that's connected to you is having this problem, but they're not telling you about it. Or they have a child's having a problem, they're not telling you about it. You don't know about it because some people are ashamed to share that with you. If you share this video with them, I got a feeling that we can get the word out a lot sooner, and we can help a lot more people than me. Okay? Always remember, we are going to be able to help a lot more people than me. So please subscribe, share this if you can, hit the like button, and we'll see you next time.